the best way to predict your future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. And when you and I get comfortable in the place of the unknown, that's where the magic happens. And it never happens in the known. An entrepreneur, in the definition, if you read the definition of entrepreneur, there's one thing that's consistent in every definition, and that is individuals willing to take a risk, stepping into the unknown, being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past. So if you don't have your vision clear in your mind by the end of this week, all of this information is philosophy. It's theory. It's intellectual data that's stored in your thinking brain. But there'll be a certain percentage of people in this room that will apply this information, that will personalize it, that will demonstrate it. And those people who learn the information and store it in their brain and can repeat it, those people who start thinking about what they're going to do with it, as they begin to think about what they're going to do with it, they begin to install the neurological hardware in their brain, priming them to a new future. And when you take all of this information and you say, how am I going to apply it to my life? And you get your behaviors to match your intentions, you get your actions equal to your thoughts, you've listened to great leaders, you've gotten specific information about success, you understand what it is, what emotional intelligence is and how it is to change a culture, and you start applying it to your life, if you're able to do it, you are going to have a new experience. And that new experience is going to enrich the circuits in your brain, because that's what experience does. And then you're going to feel like a leader. You are going to feel successful. You are going to feel clear. And the moment you feel that feeling, now you are teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind has intellectually understood. We could say that knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body. And in that moment, you are embodying leadership. You are embodying success. You are embodying clarity. Why? Because the emotion is the experience in chemical form. And the moment you feel that emotion, you're teaching your body chemically to understand what your mind is intellectually understood. You are embodying knowledge. But now here's where the expert comes in. If you've done that experience once, you have to be able to repeat it. And great people in the world who are uncompromising, they keep working to reproduce the experience. And if you can reproduce that experience over and over again, neurologically and chemically, you will condition your body to become the mind of it. Now it'll be innate in you. It'll be second nature. It'll be easy. It'll be familiar. It'll be common. It'll be automatic. You've done it so many times, it is now who you are. So our job's then to go from philosopher to initiate to master. From mind to body to soul, from knowledge to experience to wisdom, and from thinking to doing to being. And you and I have all the biological and neurological machinery to do this. But some people will get all of this information and it'll be philosophical. They'll never apply it. Those people who actually apply it and have the experience once will think that that's defining them. But people who really embody and make it innate in them, the true leaders of the world, it becomes who they are. They don't have to think about leadership. They are leadership. They don't have to think about success. They are success. It's become who they are. And by the time we're 35 years old, the model tells us that Our personality is pretty much a set of finite behaviors and emotional reactions that are acting as subconscious programs. So now the person's going to think positively with the 5% of their conscious mind, but they've been feeling negatively subconsciously for the last 30 years. That's mind and body in opposition. When you move into the present moment and you become clear that you have an intention, a very clear-minded intention, and then you begin to fall in love, you begin to move into a state of being, feeling what it would feel like to be that person. Now you're conditioning the body to a new mind. Now you're beginning to rewrite the program. And it usually takes stillness, takes quiet, it takes some concentration, and it means that you have to get beyond the parameters of the old self to reinvent a new self. So most people then try to create positive outcome in their life, but they feel guilty or unworthy. That's mind and body in opposition. We have to get into the operating system where those subconscious programs exist and begin to make changes in the operating system.
You have 100 billion neurons in your brain. 100 billion neurons. The number of connections you have in one neuron is between 10,000 and 40,000 connections. Learning is making new synaptic connections. Every time you learn something new, this is what's happening in your brain, geniuses. If you learned one bit of information today, your brain did this. That's learning. Physical evidence as a result of your interaction in the environment. Every time you learn something in your brain, there's a physical change that takes place, and learning is making new connections. If you learn anything this week, you've made a footprint. If learning is making new synaptic connections, then if you keep firing the same thoughts over and over again, you're going to wire them in your brain. So then if learning is making new synaptic connections, then remembering is maintaining them. And all of a sudden, they develop a long-term relationship. And just like any relationship, the more you communicate, the more they connect. And neurons are exactly the same way. Now, as you begin to learn information, neurons tend to assemble themselves into networks, or what's called neural networks. And neural networks are just gangs of neurons that have fired and wired together to form a community of neurosynaptic connections that's related to a thought, a skill, a habit, a behavior, a concept. So, if you think the same thoughts always lead to the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences, and the same experiences produce the same feelings, and you're now caught in your old self. But new thoughts should lead to new choices, and new choices should lead to new behaviors. New behaviors should create new experiences, and new experiences should create new emotions, and that should inspire evolution. We say that your personality creates your personal reality. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. We could say that your personality is your state of being. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, keep demonstrating the same behaviors, keep living by the same feelings and emotions, your personal reality is going to stay exactly the same. But if you have new thoughts that lead to new choices, that demonstrate new actions, that create new experiences, that cause you to feel differently, you will begin to walk into a new future. So most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. You literally have to become someone else. You have a hand. And because you have a hand, you have the same hand as the person next to you. There's only a certain amount of things you can do with your hand. But now, what makes you unique is your fingerprint. That gives you your individuality. And that is really the minute anatomy of something related to a hand. So now, what is the division that unifies both the universal traits and our individual traits? And the answer is culture. And culture is defined by the environment in which you live.
the environment in which you work, the environment of your family. An environment is made up of just a few things: people, objects, things, places, time, pets, and that's pretty much your environment. So the culture of Mexico City is defined by the environment. You eat certain foods, you like certain music, you relate with one another because of the environment in which you live in. And that culture is created from the environment, which is different than the culture of Mongolia, because it's a different environment and they have different traditions, they have different customs, because they've had to survive in a different environment. And so what unifies individual traits and universal traits is called culture. Now think about this. Most cultures are defined by the customs they have, the traditions, the language, their survival skills, their habits, their attitudes, their beliefs, their history, their arts, their social structures that have unified them as an individual culture. So the people you work with, the people you relate with, the people you interact with, you share a similar culture that bonds you both as an individual and as a species called human beings. And Mexicans are different than Australians because they live in a different environment and they have different traditions. But we could say then that culture typically is defined by things that have worked in the past. Most cultures then have a choice. To create a new culture means then you have to define your culture as a vision of the future. But most people, their cultures are based on the past, present reality. What does that mean? We are in a changing world, and the world is changing faster than most people can keep up. And if you are going to stay defined by a memory of the past, you will not keep up with this culture, because we are creating a global culture. What defines the vision of the future to change a culture? And the answer is a very clear intention, a clear purpose, combined with an elevated emotion. And when you combine a clear intention, like a vision of the future, along with an elevated emotion of inspiration and joy, you will create an empowered individual. But now here's the problem. To the materialist who's waiting for their wealth to show up to feel abundant, they're in their past. The person who's waiting for the success to feel empowered is in their past. The person who's waiting for their healing to feel wholeness, they're in their past. The person who's waiting for their riches to come to feel gratitude, they're in their past. They're materialists. You have to feel empowered in order for your success to show up. You have to feel abundant for your wealth to find you. You have to be in gratitude for you to create the life that you want. And by you teaching your body emotionally what that future could feel like ahead of the actual experience is changing your biology. Because most people wait for something outside of them to change how they feel inside of them. And when something outside of them changes how they feel inside of them, they pay attention to whoever or whatever caused that, and they create a memory. That's the old model of reality of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of you to take your pain away inside of you.
We think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. Well, if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, if you're thinking the same way, your life is going to stay the same way, because the same thoughts lead to the same choices.
That means then you have to feel gratitude every day for your new experience to occur.